All right, we're getting ready to start week 9. And so here we are with the algorithm pro football analysis. So this last week it was very good prediction. Correctly predicted 11 games uh, out of 15. So won 11 and lost 4. So it was a really good week overall. And so anyhow, let's see if we can get the same results. So on the Thursday night game, we got Philadelphia against Houston. Philadelphia is favored by 13.5. And I'm showing Philadelphia is supposed to win by quite a bit as well. Not surprising when you look at Houston's in the negative right here. That's what these are all in their ratings. The only thing that they're in the top 20 in is their defensive and pass, but they're horrible against the rush. And that's what really is going to set up this type of score here. And as you can see, Philly has a bit more balance. They're not real great over here in these two areas, but they've got a really good passing game and they've got a defensive rushing game. And so here's what the head-to-head stats. So again, the way that these stats work, these are not what they've done this year. This is the head-to-head based upon their strengths and weaknesses, based upon their previous what their current stats are. And so don't want to go too deeply into this game as the algorithm is matches what is predicted. But what I would really point out here is the strength of this running game is really going to just it's hard for any other team to match when your opponent's getting an additional 150 yards on the ground. So it just that's not gonna it's gonna be really hard to beat a team like that. All right, next game, Buffalo versus the Jets. Buffalo is favored by 13. I'm showing very similar. The one thing I'll say is um, Buffalo, they've got outstanding numbers right here. They're in the top 10 in everything. They've got a really good point differential. Yet when I look at a lot of their games, they seem to play to the level of their opponent. This last week, they won by 10 points. However, they were favored to win by 10.5. And so when you look at some of these games, like they crawled over Baltimore, they lost to Miami. It sometimes you just kind of get the impression that they kind of dial it back a little bit. And so a big point spread like this, granted, it is New York Jets, so I would still take Buffalo, but sometimes that's just what concerns me about Buffalo. I won't go too much into this, seeing as how the algorithm largely matches what's being predicted. I really don't think that New York has a chance of winning, as much as I do get concerned with Buffalo's playing to their opponent's level. So, being Cincinnati at 7, I have a hard time taking that when I'm showing that there's really no statistical difference. It's entirely, I do show a slight advantage for Cincinnati, just not points. Okay, Green Bay versus Detroit. Green Bay did definitely not play particularly well last night, but at the same time, they did show a pretty darn good running game, which is probably the first good thing that we've seen out of Green Bay at all this year. So while you're looking at that number there, uh, like I said, they put up a pretty good running game last night, and as long as you've got Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, I would say that there's at least a chance that there's going to be a passing game pop up sometime. Uh, the sportsbook has Green Bay by 3.5. The algorithm has it at more like -8 for Green Bay. And again, sometimes it's hard to the numbers and see and understand exactly what's going on with the algorithm. Overall, if you look over here at the run and pass charts, you can see that Green Bay that they're largely equal across here. You definitely see some outliers here for Detroit. Detroit's shown some really good signs this year. They've also shown some really bad signs this year. So when you go over here and you look at their protection of the quarterback and protecting the ball, it just isn't very good. But then when you go down here and you look at Green Bay, it's not particularly good either, but it is demonstrably better than that of Detroit. Detroit is showing that they've got some explosiveness over here, but again, it kind of depends on which Detroit shows up. And overall, Detroit has a knack for finding a way to lose. So definitely looking like Green Bay by the numbers should win that one. Next one, New England versus Indianapolis. Sportsbook has New England by 5.5. I'm showing them by 5.1, so they pretty much match up on that one. Which, by the way, when I see numbers like this, uh, it makes me think, okay, good. The numbers kind of match up pretty well, but then sometimes things pop out differently and kind of makes you go, well, why are they different? Uh, and that's why you kind of start getting the numbers. And sometimes it's easy to understand how the sports book sees something that doesn't show up in the numbers either. So it's always important to ask why are they the same or why are they different? Overall, the algorithm's been doing pretty good with both of these teams this year. Um, it's always questionable whether or not they're going to win by 5 or 6, but that's part of the game. Like I said, coming back here, I'm showing a bit more of an advantage for Jacksonville than what the Vegas odds makers are. And again, that's also get already look into things like the injury report as well when if you're gonna make any wagers on this. Okay, going to the Chargers versus Falcons. Once again, the algorithm does not match with the sports book. So Vegas is saying Chargers by 3. I get this off of ESPN, by the way. So whatever they have it at is what I pull it at. Whereas I'm showing slight advantage to the Falcons. So both the correlated point spread and the actual scores from the Monte Carlo simulation are showing an advantage somewhere between 2 to 3 points for Atlanta. It's at Atlanta, and let's be honest, the Chargers they can be really good sometimes. But when I look over here, these rankings are based upon their efficiency, so yards per attempt. And so that's supposed. So this here's both for this is for their offense, rushing and passing, and their defense. So not to be surprised that they've got a good pass defense with Joey Bosa, but that seems to be just about it. Whereas when you go over here, Atlanta, interestingly enough, has been good with Marcus Mariota. I don't think many people really expected that, but for the most part, they've been passing the ball reasonably well. They've been consistent in some of their other areas, and so we get more into the numbers here. This is where you can really see the differences is going to be in their rushing game right here. So you can really see that big advantage right here, whereas the Chargers just have not been able to find that at all. And then you can definitely see that the Chargers have some explosiveness, but so does Atlanta. So the other thing I will say is I think Mariota's big weakness has been in throwing interceptions, and indeed that may very well play a big difference, as it often does. So if he can control the ball and they can keep running that ball, they've got a really good chance, even though the Chargers have an advantage over here in their passing. Just they don't have as balanced of a game, and then it's showing that that Atlanta should really be able to control the ball as well. Okay, let's go to Miami versus Chicago. The sportsbook have Miami winning by 5. I'm pretty close to that, showing more like 2.5, both the correlated and then the Monte Carlo method over here as well. The one thing I'll say is this is using the season data, so I think there's 3 games that Tua Tagovailoa was out, so I think that affects some of their points and some of these other rankings a little bit. But when you come over here, when you look at Chicago, Justin Fields can really run the ball, and he can really make the difference. But other than that, they're a pretty poor team. And the way that they just got spanked this last game by Dallas, really. Oops. And here we go. Minnesota versus Washington. Vegas has Minnesota winning by 3.5, and I'm pretty close to that as well. Minnesota definitely I don't think they're a particularly well balanced team, but neither is Washington. Personally, I find that these are difficult games to call because sometimes you don't know which Kirk Cousins is really going to show up. He can light it up. Sometimes that's the reason why I think you see this point differential the way that it is. Whereas the Washington team, they're a low scoring team. They've got a very good defense. Not a great defense, but they definitely have a lot of capability. I think that these numbers are probably better if their offense controlled the ball more. So go to the run pass charts here. Pretty equal when you look at it. They're both about the same in terms of passing and rushing. Slight advantage over here in rushing for Minnesota. But when you come over here, you can definitely see that Washington, they have some explosiveness too. And sometimes Minnesota has a hard time holding the ball, but ultimately I think the game decider is going to come down over here to ball control. And like I said, when you come over here, you definitely see some more of this explosion over here in the outliers with Minnesota in both the run and pass game. But if Washington can hold the ball, that can be a game changer because then they're keeping their defense off the field and they can hold that point score down, that point spread down. So we'll see what happens, but overall I think Minnesota will probably prevail. I'm not sure what I really see what makes the sports books want to favor Arizona when the numbers are pretty clearly favoring Seattle. So it'll be an interesting, pretty feeble. But the fact that we're really only expecting the Rams to put up somewhere between 14 to 21 points really just really kind of goes to show you how poor the Rams have been playing, particularly against the pass, which is also somewhat surprising. But then when you look at some of these numbers over here, Tampa Bay has not exactly been lighting it up, but the overall the numbers match up. It's just showing when I play my pool every week, I don't always do what this is going to say. But again, 12.5 points. Kansas City can sometimes have that propensity to play to the level of their competition. And then there's other times they just blow the doors off of them. It's difficult to really to understand why that happens, but it does. And so again, 12.5 points is a big one. Tennessee, I get it that their quarterback is most likely going to be out again. Even if he's not, there's not a quarterback out there that matches up to Patrick Mahomes, I don't think. And so with that, I'm still probably going to take the under just because 12.5 points and you've got a team with Derrick Henry that can really control the ball. We'll see. And is more likely than not, in my opinion, to beat that 3-point spread. But I would say this is both teams are showing as though they're going to put up some points here, especially when you see these high numbers here. And I think on Monday Night Football, teams come out really, really amped up and looking to play. So I would look to see more at these higher ends of those of the box plots there than I would the median. So that is the end of our week 9 predictions. Good luck on your pools, your bets, or otherwise rooting for your team, your fantasy, so on and so forth. Have a good week.